I'm still holding the funeral programs when my phone rings. There are 30 or 40 people milling around the graveside, moving in that particular slow way people move after a burial. Speaking quietly, touching each other's arms. I have been standing in the same spot for several minutes, because I can't quite make my legs carry me anywhere specific. There is no specific place to go. The specific place I have been going for 30 years is the place we just lowered into the ground. The programs are printed on heavy cream paper with Walter's photo on the front. I designed them myself 3 days ago at 2 in the morning because doing something concrete felt better than lying in the dark. I've been holding them since the service, and I realize I should probably set them down, but I don't know where. My phone rings. A number I know. Grant Hale, Walter's law partner of 22 years. I answer. Nora. Grant's voice is low and careful. He's nearby. I saw him at the service, but he's not calling from nearby. He stepped away somewhere private. There's something Walter left, something I need to give you. Grant, don't tell your son, he says. Not yet, not until you've read it. My heart stutters. I look up automatically, the way you look up when someone says something that reorganizes the room. Across the grass, near the arrangement of chairs that hasn't been cleared yet, my son Miles is standing with his wife Prue and his grandmother Celia, Walter's mother. They're close together in a triangle. Celia and Prue are talking in low voices. Miles is listening. None of them are looking at me. They're looking at each other the way people look at each other when they're discussing something that requires agreement. Grant says, "Meet me tonight, my office, alone." My name is Nora. I'm 55 years old, and I have been married to Walter Alderman for 30 years. I want to say that clearly because in the hours since his burial, I've already noticed the way people are beginning to revise the story of our life together. The way Celia tells it, Walter built everything, and I was the pleasant background. The way Prue tells it, when she tells it at all, I was a woman who was good at being a wife, which is not the same thing as being capable. I ran our household for 3 decades, not as a secondary occupation, as the full, complex operation that running a household actually is. I managed our finances for the first 15 years until Walter's practice grew large enough that we hired a financial advisor. I raised Miles largely alone during the years Walter worked 14-hour days building the firm. I handled every crisis, every move, every renovation, every school conference, every medical appointment, every logistical emergency that a family generates over 30 years. I am not a woman who needs managing. Back at the house after the burial, people fill our rooms with casseroles and careful conversation. I move through it like a person walking underwater. Everything is slightly slow, slightly distant. Celia is in the living room. She's holding court, which is her natural state. She's telling people, in the warm, caring voice she's always had, Nora won't be able to manage all of this on her own. We'll help. That's what family does. I hear it from the hallway. I hear the small murmurs of agreement. Miles is nearby. He doesn't correct her. He doesn't say, "My mother has managed everything for 30 years and she's the most capable person in this room." He looks at his shoes. Later, when the guests have thinned and I go to get my coat from the hook near the front door, I reach for my keyring out of habit. My house key is missing. I notice the missing key at 7 in the evening. I tell myself I must have dropped it at the cemetery or in the car. I tell myself there's a reasonable explanation. I drive home anyway. I put my key in the front door. It doesn't turn. I try again. The key goes in and stops at a different point than it always has. The lock has been changed. The lock on the front door of the house I have lived in for 19 years has been changed today while I was at my husband's funeral reception. I knock on the door of my own house. Prue opens it. My daughter-in-law in the hallway of my home, opening the door for me. "Nora?" She steps back to let me in. Her voice has the careful warmth of a person who has rehearsed this moment. "We changed the locks. We thought, you've been through so much, and with everything that's in this house, valuable things, important documents, we just wanted to make sure it was secure while you're not yourself." "While I'm not myself," I repeat, "it's just safer," she says. "You can understand that." Miles appears behind her. He has the look he's had since Walter died, a look I've been interpreting as grief and am now beginning to reinterpret. "Mom," he says. Don't make this hard. Don't make this hard. The home I've lived in for 19 years. The day of my husband's funeral. Don't make this hard. My knees go weak, but I don't let them show it. I look past Miles into the hallway. Near the stairs, placed with a neatness that suggests intention, is a suitcase. My suitcase. The blue one I've traveled with for a decade. It's packed and standing upright like it's waiting for a trip I didn't book. Celia is in the kitchen when I find her. She's made tea, which is her version of establishing territorial presence. She makes tea in other people's homes and then pours it for them as though the hospitality is hers to offer. Nora, she gestures toward a chair. Sit down. I sit. I feel, as I often feel around Celia, that I am 5 years old and have been called to account for something. The house is a lot to manage, she says. The paperwork alone, after something like this, it's enormous, and you're grieving. You shouldn't have to carry all of that right now. I'm capable of managing my own house, I say. Of course you are. She pats my hand. The same pat, firm and proprietary. But for now, why don't you stay in the guest house? Just while things get sorted. A fresh start, some breathing room. The guest house is a converted garage at the back of the property. It has one room, a small bathroom, and a hot plate. Walter and I used to let visiting relatives stay there. It feels, sitting at my own kitchen table, being offered it as a fresh start. Like exile with a pleasant name. Celia says, it'll be easier for everyone. I look at the kitchen I've cooked in for 19 years. The cabinets I chose. The tiles I picked. Walter's coffee mug still on the counter where I left it this morning because I couldn't move it yet. From somewhere in the house, past the hallway, I hear Prue's voice. She's on the phone, or speaking to someone quietly, and most of it is unintelligible, but I catch one sentence clearly. Find the folder, the one with the blue tab. Grant's office is on the 4th floor of the firm's building. I've been here hundreds of times over 22 years. For holiday parties, for the annual firm dinner, for occasional lunches when I'd meet Walter downtown. The receptionist knows my name. The elevator opens on the same polished hallway. Tonight, it's after hours. Grant let me in through the side entrance. The office is lit only by the desk lamp in his private office, which makes everything look serious and a little cinematic, which I don't think is accidental. Grant looks like a man who has been holding something for a long time and is relieved to set it down. He pours 2 glasses of water. He doesn't offer anything else. Then he reaches into his desk drawer and removes an envelope. It's sealed, cream-colored. My name is written on the front in Walter's handwriting. I know his handwriting the way I know my own reflection. Grant slides it across the desk. He gave this to me 2 months ago, he says. He'd just gotten the diagnosis confirmed. He said. Grant stops, clears his throat. He said, Grant, if things get ugly after I'm gone, give this to Nora. Only Nora. Make sure she's alone when she reads it. What did he mean by ugly? I ask. Grant looks at the envelope. I think he meant exactly what's happening. I pick up the envelope. It's heavier than it looks. I look at the front. Walter's handwriting, my name, and underneath, in smaller letters that I have to lean closer to read. Nora, read alone. Do not show Miles yet. Yet, not never. Yet. There is a timeline embedded in that word, and I don't know what it is. I read the letter in Grant's office with him in the hallway. Walter's handwriting covers 4 pages. The first paragraph is Walter the way I knew him in private. Tender, direct, honest. He tells me he's sorry for what I'm about to go through. He tells me he should have handled some things sooner and ran out of time. Then the letter gets sharper. If you're reading this, he writes, my mother and Miles are being pushed. Not necessarily by their own worst instincts. Celia and Prue are smarter than that. They'll use grief like a crowbar. They'll frame every question you ask as evidence that you're not coping, and every boundary you try to hold as selfishness. He writes about Prue. He calls her reckless with money and says she's been creating pressure in their marriage that Miles doesn't fully understand. He writes about Celia. She will perform grief better than anyone there and use it to consolidate what she's always wanted. Control. Then, I set protections. But they'll try to break you first. Don't let them. The breaking is the point. If they can make you react, they can make you look unstable. 2 paragraphs from the end, a sentence that makes me go still. There is a second will, Nora, filed quietly 6 weeks ago. Grant knows where. The one they'll show you is older. I read those 2 sentences 4 times. A second will. Filed quietly. 6 weeks ago. And the one they'll show me is older. The older will appears the next morning. Miles comes to the guest house where I spent my first night in 30 years not sleeping in my own bed in my own house. He knocks at 8, which is early enough to catch me before I've had enough coffee to be strategic. He comes in and sits at the small table. He has a printed document in a manila folder, and he sets it on the table with the careful movement of someone performing a gesture they've been instructed to perform. Prue is behind him. She hovers in the doorway without coming in. Her role is to be present without being the one doing the talking. Miles slides the folder toward me. "Dad's will," he says. "I thought you should see it." I open it. The language is formal estate language, but I read it carefully. The will divides Walter's assets. There is a monthly stipend designated for me, modest, not poverty, but modest. The remainder of the estate, including the house, the firm interest, and the investment accounts, goes into an arrangement that gives Celia oversight authority as a co-executor. Celia, my mother-in-law, oversight authority over the estate of the husband I was married to for 30 years. I look at the signature date. 2 years ago. 2 years ago, not recently. Not the will of a man who just received a terminal diagnosis and had time to put his final thoughts in order. This is an old will that predates everything. "Dad wanted to make sure you were taken care of," Miles says. His voice has Prue's rhythms in it. Her phrasing. Not in charge, just taken care of. I close the folder. I set it back on the table. "Thank you for showing me," I say. Church on Sunday is its own exercise. I go because I have gone to this church for 23 years, and because I refuse to let Celia's presence be the reason I stay away from something that is mine. Celia arrives before me. She is already in the receiving line outside when I pull into the parking lot, and I watch her through my windshield for a moment before I get out. She is hugging people. She is accepting condolences. She is performing the role of the bereaved matriarch with the practiced ease of a woman who has been rehearsing for exactly this role her entire life. As I walk toward the entrance, I hear her voice carry. "Nora's confused right now," she's saying to a woman I know from the women's group. "It's understandable. She doesn't know what she wants. We're trying to help, but she's making it difficult." Confused. Difficult. 2 words that will now belong to me in other people's minds. Miles, standing nearby, does not correct her. I walk past them into the church. Inside, my friend Dina is already in our usual pew. She has held that space for me every Sunday for 15 years. She squeezes my hand when I sit beside her, and she does not say anything soft and useless. After the service, outside, she pulls me slightly apart from the stream of departing people. "Don't react," she says quietly. "Whatever Celia does, whatever Miles says, write it down instead. Dates, words, witnesses." "I know," I say. "Do it anyway," she says. Then, more quietly. "Prue was at the church office the morning Walter died. She asked the office assistant about Walter's life insurance policies. The morning he died. I call Walter's insurance company on Monday morning. I go to my car first. Not the guest house, not the main house. My car, parked at the end of the driveway because it's the only place on this property that feels entirely mine. I call the life insurance company and give them my name and policy information, and ask about the status of the beneficiary designation. The representative is professional and careful in the way representatives are when the information they have is complicated. "Mrs. Alderman," she says, "I can confirm that there was a beneficiary update request submitted to this office." My mouth goes dry. "When?" I say. "I can't confirm the exact date without your account verification, but I can tell you the request is currently pending verification. It has not been processed." "Who submitted the request?" I ask. That's part of what verification is sorting out. I asked to place a hold on any changes, a temporary fraud hold, which I know is available because I researched this the previous night while I couldn't sleep. She walks me through the process. I have to provide documentation. I provide what I have. Before I hang up, I ask one more question. "Can you tell me how the request was submitted? What method?" A pause. "It came through by fax," she says, "from a fax line registered to the Alderman Hale law firm." Walter's office fax line. Someone used my late husband's office fax machine to submit a change to his life insurance beneficiary. I return to the main house that afternoon. I have a reason to be there. I need clothes. I need my medications. I need my personal files from the small cabinet in the bedroom that I've kept my own records in for 20 years. These are not negotiable items, and I state this to Prue when she appears at the front door. She lets me in. She follows me, not intrusively, just present. The way a person is present when they're monitoring. I go to Walter's office first. The door is closed. I try it. Locked. We locked it to preserve everything until the estate is sorted, Prue says from the hallway. I need access to our shared files, I say. Once probate is established, you'll have proper access. I look at the locked door. I think about what I heard Prue say 2 days ago. Find the folder, the one with the blue tab. I can't see the shelves. I can't see what's there or what isn't there. I can only see a closed door. I go to the bedroom and collect my things. While I'm in the closet, I scan the room with the attention of someone who has lived in a space long enough to know when it's been touched. Walter's desk in the corner of the bedroom. Gone. Not physically gone. Still there, but his laptop that was always on it is missing. His reading glasses. The small notebook he kept in the top drawer. I go to the bathroom and collect my medications. On my way back through the bedroom, I pass the small waste bin near the door. Something catches my eye. A torn piece of paper at the bottom. I pick it up. 4 words in someone's handwriting that isn't Walter's. Safe deposit, box 219. Celia steps out of the hallway into the bedroom doorway. She steps directly in front of the waste bin and smiles at me. I call Grant from my car the same evening. Box 219, I say when he answers. Safe deposit. You know about it. He's quiet for a moment. Then, Walter opened it after his diagnosis. About 4 months ago, he told me it held documents that could protect you. He said you'd know what to do with them once you had access. Can I access it? Not without probate authority established in your name, Grant says. The bank will require either a court order or documented executor status before they allow access. How long does that take? Depends on whether someone contests it. He pauses. Nora, you should talk to an attorney. Not a family friend. A dedicated estate attorney who works for you. I already have someone in mind, I say. Good. Another pause. One more thing. Walter filed a petition with the court 6 weeks before he died to update certain designations, to make sure the newer instruments were on record. The second will, I say. He's surprised, I know. Yes, it should be in the court record, but someone would need to know to look for it. I call Sloane Mercer that evening. She's been a friend for 12 years and an estate attorney for 22. I've never needed to separate those 2 roles until now. Sloane listens to everything I tell her without interrupting. When I finish, she says, we can petition for access to the box and for recognition of the newer will. But Nora, if they've already moved to establish their own version of the estate, this will be contested. She pauses. Are you ready for war? I don't get to file first. I find out on a Thursday morning, a week after Walter's burial. When Sloane calls me with a voice that is controlled in the particular way of a person managing their own reaction before communicating someone else's. Miles has filed to be named executor. The petition cites several things. Walter's expressed wish that family manage the estate, the complexity of the firm assets, and the line that knocks the air out of me, his mother's current emotional instability, as a reason she should not be in charge of her own husband's estate. My emotional instability, named in a court filing, by my son. I sit in the guest house with my phone in my hands for 3 minutes. I don't call anyone. I don't respond. I just sit and breathe. Then Prue knocks on the guest house door. She comes in with the expression of someone delivering news they've been asked to deliver with a sympathetic face. Miles filed, she says, as if I don't know. It's for the best. You shouldn't have to deal with all of this right now. We're doing it for you. She says we. Miles filed, but it's we. I heard, I say. The court date is set, she says. 10 days. She leaves. I call Sloane. They filed, I say. I know, she says. I just received notification. What do? We respond, she says, immediately, and we request access to box 2119 as part of our case. I'm going to argue that the newer will supersedes the executor petition entirely. She pauses. And Nora, tell me everything you know about Prue's family. Grant calls me at 10 o'clock on a Friday night. His voice is different from the controlled, careful voice he used at his office. This is the voice of a man who is scared in a specific, identified way. "They found out I spoke to you," he says. "Who found out?" "I don't know exactly, but someone called the firm's senior partner today asking about my case files, asking whether I'd shared confidential materials." "Had you?" "No, I gave you a personal letter Walter wrote. That's not a case file." He breathes. "But someone is looking, and last night?" He stops. "Someone tried to access the firm's digital archives. After hours, the system flagged an unauthorized entry attempt." I think about the fax line, the insurance change request submitted from Walter's office fax. "Grant," I say, "Walter suspected something happening inside the firm, didn't he?" The silence on his end is long enough to be its own answer. "He noticed discrepancies," Grant says finally. "He didn't say who, he said he was looking into it when he got sick." "Discrepancies in client funds?" More silence. "Grant, there was a consultant," he says, "someone billing the firm. Walter flagged the invoices. He froze the payments 3 weeks before his diagnosis was confirmed." A pause. "The consultant is Prue's brother." I put my phone down for a moment, pick it back up. "And if Walter was gone," I say slowly, "and the estate was managed by Miles and Prue was behind Miles, the audit Walter started would stop," Grant says. "The frozen payments would be unfrozen. The review would never happen." I think about the locked office door, the missing laptop, the torn paper in the waste bin. "Sloan says they'll come for my credibility next," I say. "She's right," he says. "Nora, be careful." The audit trail exists. Walter was methodical. He was, above everything, a careful man. 22 years of building a law firm teaches a person to document, to leave paper, to never rely on memory when a memo will do. Grant meets me and Sloan at Sloan's office the next afternoon. He brings what he can without crossing attorney-client lines. A memo Walter wrote to himself, internal, not filed with the firm, outlining what he'd found. The memo describes client fund discrepancies, invoices from a consulting entity called Harmon Advisory that don't correspond to any documented service, multiple payments over 14 months totaling a significant amount. The consulting entity's principal is listed as R. Harmon. Prue's maiden name is Harmon. Her brother is named Rex. Walter wrote in the memo, "Payments authorized at partner level but service documentation is missing or vague. I have frozen further disbursement pending full review. I have not yet spoken to Grant about this as I want complete documentation first." He never got complete documentation. He got sick. Sloan reads the memo without speaking. Then she sets it down. "This is the motive," she says. "This is why it has to be Miles and not you. You might audit the firm. Miles, managed by Prue, won't." I sit with the weight of that for a moment, the shape of what was built around my husband's death. Not just family greed. Something more organized, something that was already in place before he died. "If they're this desperate," Sloan says, "they'll come for your credibility next." She looks at me, and I think they're about to. Celia arrives at the guest house on a Monday afternoon with soup. She has always arrived with food, casseroles, soup, baked things. The food is the prop. The food says I am here as a nurturer, as a provider, as someone whose presence is generosity. The food makes whatever comes next sound like it's coming from the same impulse. She sets the soup on the small table and sits down and looks at me with genuine seeming concern. "Nora," she says, "you haven't seemed right since the funeral. That's understandable. No one would seem right. But Miles and I are worried." "I'm managing," I say. "Are you?" She tilts her head, the specific tilt she's always used for moments like this. "You've been agitated, suspicious, making accusations about the house, about documents, about insurance?" "I've been asking questions," I say, "and we want to make sure you have the support you need." She folds her hands. "We thought, just as a precaution, just to make sure everyone is protected, we'd have you evaluated, cognitively, just to have it on record that you're well." She says it gently, like she's offering something helpful. Miles appears in the doorway behind her, which means they drove here together. "It's just a precaution," he says, echoing her words, "for everyone's peace of mind." I look at them both. My mother-in-law, who has been performing concern for 30 years, and my son, who has been taught to echo her. Then a car pulls up outside the guest house window. A man gets out and walks to the door. He has a manila envelope. He asks for my name, he confirms it, he hands me the envelope, I open it. A petition for temporary conservatorship, filed by Celia Alderman and Miles Alderman. My hands tremble, not from weakness, from rage I am choosing not to express. I make a list that night. Not a list of things I feel. A list of things I can prove. Dina comes to the guest house in the morning and brings her printer and her particular quality of silent, practical competence. We print everything. The bank records I have access to, my personal financial management records going back 20 years. The household accounts I've maintained in spreadsheets since 2004. The property records showing my name on the deed. The tax filings showing my signature alongside Walter's. I go to my doctor, Dr. Patricia Vane, who has been my physician for 16 years. I explain what's happening, not emotionally, practically. A conservatorship petition has been filed. It will require the court to assess whether I'm capable of managing my own affairs. I need a letter documenting my cognitive and functional status. Dr. Vane listens. Then she says, come in Thursday for a full screening. I'll have the letter ready Friday. I call my former employer. I worked for 12 years in hospital administration before Walter's career required more of my time. My former director still knows my work. I call him. I explain what I need. He says he'll have a reference letter ready by end of week. I keep my notebook with me. Dates, phrases, witnesses. Then the bank calls. Not my bank. The bank that holds box 219. The manager asks me to come in. The bank manager's name is Patricia Foss, and she has the expression of someone who has decided to tell me something that required a decision to tell. Mrs. Alderman, she says, yesterday afternoon a man came in requesting access to safe deposit box 219 under your account. He presented identification showing himself as Miles Alderman and claimed you had authorized his access. I look at her. I did not authorize his access, I say. That's what I suspected. His paperwork was incomplete. He didn't have the required documentation for third-party access. She pauses. I declined to allow him in. But I wanted you to know it was attempted. What did you tell him? I told him proper documentation was required and that if there was a dispute about account access, it would need to go through a court process. She folds her hands. I've flagged the account for in-person only access by you with photo ID. I thank her, and I call Sloan from the parking lot. Sloan files an emergency motion that afternoon. Preservation of assets. Specifically, no one may access box 219 without a court order. She argues that multiple attempts to access estate assets outside of proper legal channels constitute grounds for immediate protective measures. The judge, I find out the next morning, grants a temporary order. No one touches box 219 until the hearing. I call Sloan when I hear. How long does temporary mean? I ask. Until the full hearing, where we'll ask the court to grant you limited authority to open the box with me present. And if the court grants it? Then we open the box, she says, and we find out what Walter left. 5 days before the hearing, Celia hosts a family meeting. I am not invited. I find this out from Dina, who hears it from someone who was there. The meeting is at Celia's house, not mine. It includes relatives on Walter's side, several of the firm's social connections, and a few people from the church community. The narrative presented, according to Dina's account the next morning, is this. Nora is struggling. She has been confrontational, accusatory, and resistant to help. The family is doing everything it can to support her through her grief, while also protecting the estate Walter built. No one at the meeting calls me to ask my version. That evening, Prue comes to the guest house. She doesn't bring food. She brings a document. Sign this, she says, and we'll stop the court proceedings. All of it. We'll work it out as a family without a judge involved. I take the document. I read it. It is a resignation of rights. It states that I voluntarily relinquish any claim to executorship of Walter's estate and consent to the arrangements proposed by the other signatories. The other signatories are Miles and Celia. I look up at Prue. She's standing in the middle of the guest house, and something is different about her tonight. Her certainty is slightly off. Her hands, I notice, are not completely still. She's not as confident as she's been. I hand the document back. No, I say. She takes it. She looks at it for a moment. Then she leaves without saying anything else. Sloan calls me on a Thursday morning with the news I've been waiting for. The court has granted limited authority for me to open Box 219 with Sloan present as my legal representative, with a court officer in attendance. It's a narrow, formal process, and it takes place in the bank's private viewing room. The box is a standard size, heavier than I expected when the bank employee slides it out. Sloan opens it with the key the court process produced. Inside, a document in a sealed envelope. On the outside, in Walter's writing, last will and testament executed 6 weeks before death. Sloan takes this with gloved hands and photographs it before opening. A sealed packet. The front reads, in Walter's handwriting, "If you are being pressured, open with counsel." A handwritten note on a single folded page. I read it before Sloan can intercept it and tell me to wait. It says, if Miles is acting strange, it's not just grief. He has been told things. The question is whether he believes them or whether he can still choose differently. And at the bottom of the box, below everything else, a USB drive. A small black USB in a paper sleeve. On the sleeve, in Walter's handwriting, Grant, only with counsel. I pick it up and hold it in my hand. My husband planned for this. In the months when he was dying, when he must have been terrified and exhausted and in pain, he sat down and built a box of weapons for me to find. Sloan puts a hand on my arm. Let's go through this properly, she says. Sloan opens the newer will in her office with me present and a second attorney as witness. She reads it aloud. Her voice is steady and professional. Walter's newer will names me as sole executor of his estate. It leaves Celia a fixed amount, a specific sum, not oversight authority, not influence. A number. The remainder of the estate, the house, the firm interest, the investment accounts, the savings, goes into a trust with conditions attached. The conditions are specific and documented. Walter wrote the trust language himself. Sloan notes this is unusual and somewhat unconventional, but entirely valid. The sealed packet contains something that makes Sloan go very still. Copies of documents. Walter had found and preserved copies of attempts to alter certain instruments, an attempted signature on a loan document restructuring firm Equity that Walter identified as a forgery attempt. He kept the original alongside the attempt, annotated in his handwriting with dates and observations. Someone tried to forge Walter's signature on a firm document weeks before he died. The forged document would have restructured equity arrangements in a way that benefited, I read it and reread it, an entity connected to Harmon Advisory, Prue's Brothers Company. Sloan looks at me. Walter didn't just know about the billing irregularities, she says. He knew someone tried to forge his name to complete what they couldn't get him to sign voluntarily. She sets the packet down, and he documented everything and put it in a box for you to find, she says. Because he knew he was running out of time, I say. We sit with that for a moment. The USB, I say. What's on it? The hearing is the following Tuesday. Celia arrives in black, which is appropriate for a widow's mother-in-law, and she wears it with the particular gravity of a woman who knows how clothing communicates. Prue is in something understated. She has worked on her presentation. She looks like a concerned daughter-in-law doing her difficult best in an impossible situation. Miles sits behind their table with the expression I've been watching develop over the past 10 days. He looks like a man who has been told a story so many times he can't always remember which parts he actually witnessed and which parts he was told. Their attorney presents the conservatorship case. Nora is emotionally overwhelmed. She has made accusations against her own family. She has hired an attorney rather than accepting family help. She has been resistant and confrontational in a time that calls for cooperation. Each observation is technically traceable to something real. The accusations are my questions. The attorney is my protection. The resistance is my refusal to sign documents that would strip my rights. Everything I've done to protect myself, reframed as evidence that I need protecting from. Then Sloan stands. She presents the cognitive letter from Dr. Vane. Fully competent, no impairment, no clinical indicators of any kind. She presents the employment reference from my former director. She presents my financial records. 20 years of household management. Then she says, Your Honor, we would like to request that the court recognize a newer will, executed 6 weeks before Mr. Alderman's death, which has been authenticated and is ready for submission. The judge, Judge Lorna Kessler, a woman in her late 50s with reading glasses and a manner that brooks no performance, looks up. "Why was the older will presented to this court as the operative document?" she asks. She's looking at the opposing table. No one answers quickly enough. Grant is called as a witness. He takes the stand with the expression of a man who has made a decision and has accepted what it will cost him. Sloan asks him to describe his relationship to Walter, to the firm, to the letter he delivered to me. He answers carefully and completely. Then Sloan asks him about the insurance change request, about the firm's fax line, about who had access to that fax machine. Grant's face tightens. He says that access to the firm's fax system was restricted to partners and senior staff. He says that in the days immediately following Walter's death, before estate matters were formalized, there were individuals at the office who should not have had access but who were present. He says one more thing. He says that during the weeks before Walter's death, there was pressure from outside the firm, he uses that phrase, outside the firm, encouraging him to stay quiet about certain financial matters. He was told that family would be handling things, and that his cooperation would be appreciated. He says he was scared. He says he should have called me sooner. Sloan then presents the USB evidence, admitted under court supervision, under seal. The USB contains payment approvals, billing records, emails showing invoices from Harmon Advisory, and, at the end of the file structure, a folder labeled in Walter's file organization system, for audit. Walter's note in that folder reads, "If I die, Nora must audit everything. Start with Harmon Advisory." Judge Kessler looks at the billing records. Then she looks at Prue. Prue leans toward Miles and whispers something. I hear it. 3 rows away, in a quiet courtroom, I hear it. Don't let her open the firm books. The USB doesn't contain scandal in the dramatic sense. It contains receipts. That's what Sloan says afterward when we're reviewing what the court examined. Not dramatic revelations, not explosive confrontations, just documentation. Email threads showing invoices approved without adequate service documentation. Payment records with approval notes in Prue's handwriting. She had access to firm administrative accounts through Miles, who had been made a junior partner 2 years ago. Walter's notes in the for audit folder are precise and understated. He wasn't accusing. He was documenting what he found and what needed to be verified. He expected to be alive to verify it. He wasn't, so he left the verification to me. The billing anomalies total a significant sum over 14 months. The invoices from Harmon Advisory describe strategic consulting services in language vague enough to be unfalsifiable. The payments went to an account registered to Rex Harmon. Sloan presents a summary to Judge Kessler. The judge is quiet for a long moment after reviewing it. Then she removes her reading glasses and looks at the room. What I have before me, she says, is a conservatorship petition filed against a woman who, by all clinical and professional evidence, is fully competent. The petition appears to have been filed in the context of a broader effort to control estate proceedings that, based on the newer will now before this court, would have placed that woman in the appropriate role of executor. She pauses. Additionally, there is evidence suggesting financial irregularities connected to individuals who are parties to or have interests in this proceeding, which this court is referring to the appropriate authorities for review. She looks at the opposing table. Mrs. Prue Alderman, she says, please inform your counsel that attempting to influence estate proceedings while also being a potential subject of financial review is a significant conflict of interest. Prue's face stays composed. But her hands beneath the table are not still. Judge Kessler denies the conservatorship petition. She removes Miles's executor petition from consideration pending the outcome of the financial review. She notes for the record that the newer will, properly executed and authenticated, supersedes all prior instruments. She names me executor of Walter's estate. In the gallery, Celia's expression goes through several phases quickly. The performance phase, then the processing phase, then something that settles into something harder and quieter. The face of a woman recalibrating. Prue stands before the ruling is fully finished and says something to her attorney in a low voice that I can't hear. She leaves the courtroom before it's adjourned. Miles stays. He stays in his seat after everyone else begins moving. His attorney touches his arm and Miles shakes his head slightly. I'm gathering my papers from our table. Sloane is speaking to the clerk. The room is becoming ordinary again, the way rooms do once a formal proceeding ends. I look up and Miles is standing 6 feet away from me. He looks different than he's looked any time in the past 10 days. He looks like himself, the version of himself I know under the coached, rehearsed version he's been performing. He looks like he's been asleep for 10 days and has just woken up in a courthouse. "Mom," he says. His voice is quiet, cracked slightly. He looks at me with the expression of someone who has been standing inside a story for a long time and has just walked out of it and found himself in a completely different place than he expected. "What did I do?" he says. Celia passes us on her way to the exit. She doesn't stop. She doesn't speak to Miles. She walks past her grandson like he's furniture she's decided not to take with her. Prue's final move comes the next morning. An emergency motion, filed through her attorney, claiming I am hiding assets and that the estate accounting cannot be trusted without independent oversight. I read it at Sloane's office over coffee. Sloane reads it once, sets it down, almost smiles. "She just handed us the cleanest possible response," she says. She files an immediate answer requesting court-ordered accounting. Full, forensic, comprehensive. Every transaction, every account, every financial movement connected to the estate going back 3 years, traced, documented, and submitted for court review. This is exactly what Prue was trying to prevent. A court-ordered accounting forces every transaction into daylight, including the Harmon advisory payments, including the external accounts, including whatever was happening with the firm's finances while Miles was positioned as a junior partner, and Prue had administrative access. You cannot request an independent accounting of someone else's handling of an estate, and then object to an accounting being applied to your own role. Prue's motion triggers the very review she has spent 2 weeks trying to prevent. The judge orders it within 48 hours. Celia's role in the estate proceedings is reduced to the fixed sum Walter designated in his newer will. Her oversight authority, granted in the older will, doesn't exist in the instrument the court has now recognized as operative. She receives her amount. She has no authority over anything else. Prue's family consulting pipeline, the Harmon advisory billing arrangement, is cut off. The referral to the Financial Review Board means the firm must pause all payments to any entity under review. Miles moves out of our house, not because I force him, because he asks me if he can. He comes to me 2 weeks after the hearing and sits at the kitchen table, in our actual kitchen, the one I've been sleeping in my own house again for 11 days. "I need to figure out who I've been," he says. "I can't do that here. Not right now." He looks like Frank, like Walter, in the way Miles has always looked like his father when he's being honest with himself. "Okay," I say. "I'm sorry," he says. "I know," I say. "Can we?" He stops. "Is there a way back from this?" I look at my son. The person I raised alone during 14-hour days when Walter was building the firm. The person I sat up with through illness and heartbreak and every ordinary crisis of a childhood. The person who signed a court filing calling me emotionally unstable. "There's a way forward," I say. "Back is gone. Forward is what's available." He nods. He moves out on a Saturday. I help him carry boxes. The house is quiet after he leaves. I stand in Walter's office, unlocked now, reorganized by me over the past 2 weeks, laptop returned by court order, and I look at his desk. His coffee mug is back on the corner where he always kept it. I sit in his chair. I think about the box he built for me, the months he spent while he was dying, quietly assembling the tools I would need, the letter that began with tenderness and ended with precision, the USB labeled with Grant's name, the sealed packet with the forgery evidence, the newer will that named me executor and left me the authority to do what needed doing. He couldn't protect me while he was alive. He was already sick and running out of time, and the people around him were already maneuvering. So he protected me from across the distance of his death. Sloane calls that afternoon to confirm the accounting has begun, and the court's executor appointment has been formally processed. My name is now on every relevant document. My authority is formal and recorded and documented. "What do you need from me this week?" she asks. "I think I'm okay," I say. And I am. Not the way I was before Walter died, That version of okay doesn't exist anymore. But the version that exists after you've been through the worst of something and come out the other side with your hands clean and your name on the right documents. That version, that kind of okay. I open the estate accounting file on the laptop. I start reviewing the first column of numbers. Walter trusted me to audit everything. I begin. They called me a grieving woman who needed managing. Walter called me the person with the paperwork and the patience to see it through. Walter was right. Subscribe, because the next story might save you from the kind of family help that quietly empties your life while calling it love. If any part of this felt familiar, stay with me.